Good morning, students. Today I am going to explain last topic of chapter number 7, weavers, iron smelters and factory owners from history. And today's topic is iron and steel factories come up in India. Okay? So students, in my previous explanation, as I told you that due to the import of iron from Britain to India, the traditional techniques of iron smelting is started to decline. And iron smith in India began using the imported iron to manufacture utensils and implements. Okay? And this imported iron lowered the demand for iron produced by local smelters. Okay? And by the starting of 20th century, the artisans producing iron steel faced a new competition. So students, after some time later, the year was 1904. In the hot month of April, Charles Weld, an American geologist, and Dorabji Tata, the eldest son of Jamshedji Tata, were traveling in Chhattisgarh in search of iron ore deposits because Jamshedji Tata was planning to establish a steel plant in India. Okay? And the Tatas could find iron and ore deposits in Chhattisgarh, but they could not find a good source of water because water was important for running an iron and steel factory, and hence they decided to look somewhere else. All right. So students, you know very well that time water was required by the Jamshedji Tata because for the production of electricity also. Okay. So students, finally the Tatas could find a large area of iron ore reserve on the banks of the river Subarnarekha. Okay? And the Tata Iron Steel Company was set up at that place, and production in the factory began in 1912. And students, this place was developed into a township which is known as Jamshedpur. Okay? And student, as I told you above that, Tata searched for a best location. So, when he was traveling here and there in search of best location, then Weld and Dorabji came upon a small village and found a group of men and women carrying basket loads of iron ore. And these people were called or known as Agarias. And the tribals who were living in that region. And when asked where they had found the iron ore, the Agarias pointed to a hill in the distance. Then Weld and Dorabji reached the hill after an exhausting trek through dense forest, and exploring the hill, the geologists declared that they had at last found what they had been looking for. And students, that was Rajhara Hills. one of the finest ores in the world where Tatas got. All right. But problem was related to the dry region and water for necessary for running the factories or industries. So Tatas had to continue their search for a more suitable place to set up their factory. And also Agarese helped in the discovery of source of iron ore that would later supply the Bhilai steel plant. And finally, as I told you, in 1912, TISCO that came up began producing steel. All right. And students, this was very important and beneficial time for TISCO or Tata Iron Steel Company because expansion of railways in India was taking place. Initially, the British experts in the Indian railways were not convinced about the quality of steel produced in India, but the First World War changed the situation. And by the time of TISCO was set up, the situation was changing because in 1914 the First World War broke out. All right, and steel produced in Britain was being utilized to meet the demands of the war. Finally, as a result, the Indian railways turned to TISCO for supply of rails. And students, the TISCO also produced shells and carriage wheels for the war. And by the 1919, the colonial government was buying 90% of the steel manufactured by TISCO. Gradually, TISCO became the biggest steel industry within the British Empire. All right, students. So, students, summary is this. Finally, in the case of iron and steel, and also in the case of cotton textile, Indian industries expand only when British imports into India declined and the market for Indian industrial goods increased. All right, and this happened only during the First World War and after, because before the First World War, totally and completely British dominated all over the India and many important countries of the world. And students, after some time later, the nationalist movement developed and the industrial class became stronger. Okay? And the demand for government protection became louder, and people and nationalists started to struggle to control over India because they wanted to wipe out the British Empire from all over the India due to the very bad rule. Okay? So students, finally, anyhow, Indian industries was started to develop and British Empire also also lost their domination from all over the India. Alright students, so for today's that's all. Listen my lecture very carefully, and anywhere if you have any doubt please contact me. Alright, thank you and have a nice day.